So good afternoon everyone. Now, where did we stop the last time? Is there a echo?
Yes, sir.
किसी को भेजना echo आ रहा है. Okay. So we had talked about the Gandhian experiences in South Africa, right? And the Gandhian views. Did we talk about Gandhi's principles on Satyagraha? The 4 principles of Satyagraha. We did not, right? So we'll talk about it today. Now, your ethics is also going on. Did no? Long time ago. Okay. So basically, while you're talking about Gandhi's ideas of Satyagraha, Gandhi's experiences in South Africa, what we are going to talk about today is the period, firstly, from 1917 to the period up till 1924 and probably 27, this period. Okay, that's what we'll talk about today. Now, first thing is that when Gandhi is arriving within India, by the time Gandhi arrives to India, you see that a number of other things are happening. After 1914, when Gandhian struggles in South Africa are over, it is in 1915 that Gandhi departs from South Africa, and over the next year, 1916, he's actually basically taking a close look at the actions and the current prevailing political climate in India. Now, did we talk about the Lucknow session, the Lucknow Pact? Right? So we talked about that at the same point of time, the Congress was trying to revive itself. We talked about the Lucknow session and the Lucknow Pact, that Annie Besant and Tilak are leading the efforts to revive the Congress. That leads to the Lucknow session and the reunification, and then also the broader coming together of Jinnah and bringing the Muslim League with it, and Congress and Jinnah coming together in the Lucknow Pact. So the broader nationalist activity was seeking to revive itself when? In 1916 onwards. Now at this point of time, it is Gandhi who picks up a number of struggles in 1917 onwards. And these struggles are the ones which you broadly see. These struggles are the ones which you broadly see in the case of, to begin with, in the case of Champaran. Now, I'm not going to dictate the details of Champaran, etc. I'll discuss. If you want to write, you can write with me. And the rest of the details you'll get in the PowerPoint presentation. Now, there's Champaran, there is Kheda, and there is the Ahmedabad mill strike. Now, please focus, as it is not just important to know. In your prelims examination, there's a question last year on Champaran, or what was the issue in Champaran. Similarly, Kheda is important, and similarly is important is Ahmedabad. अभी चंपारण के 100 साल हुए थे, तो 2017 में, तो 2018 में ये सब खेड़ा, अहमदाबाद, ये सब यही है. Okay, so questions on Kheda, Ahmedabad can definitely be asked in your prelims examination. What is also important is the takeaway from this from your mains examination point of view. I'll come to Gandhi's ideas of Satyagraha also, Gandhian ideas of trusteeship also. Have you discussed any of Gandhi's ideas in ethics till now? No. Abhi, you are discussing what you discuss what? Utilitarianism, all those things? Moral thinkers? नहीं हुआ है वो. Case studies और वो सब हुआ है. तो देखिए, एक चीज है, एक ये आगे आपको क्या करना है, प्रयाग बनाना है. आगे आपको प्रयाग बनाना है, केस स्टडीज और पॉलिटिकल थिंकर्स के बीच में. व्हेन यू सॉल्व अ केस स्टडी, ideally you should be able to bring ideas of Indian political thinkers into action, bring a sangam of them. Okay, so that is what you need to do. So for that you should know what are the political ideas of Gandhi, which we'll discuss here. Okay, now firstly starting from Champaran. Champaran is the area. Champaran is where? In Bihar. Champaran is predominantly in Bihar. In the northern Bihar region, Champaran district was the one where one Mr. Shukla one Mr. Shukla, who was a local Congress member in Champaran, wrote a letter to Gandhi, who was then visiting Calcutta, to come and take a closer look at the plight of peasants in Champaran, and probably if he finds the issue worth his attention, to pick up the issue and get the plight of the peasants in the Champaran region addressed. And to that extent, the issue in Champaran, from a prelims point of view, you need to know that basically, firstly, what was the issue in Champaran? The first issue that Gandhi picked up in India was the Champaran issue. And in Champaran, the issue was what? The forced cultivation of indigo. Remember we had talked about the Indigo Rebellion? Before, we had talked about the Indigo Revolt? Much ago, long ago. Right? Just like in ethics, in history also in long ago. We had talked about Indigo Revolt during the 19th century. Deen Bandhu Mitra. Neel Darpan. नहीं हुआ नहीं इंडिगो ब्लू क्रॉप है एक सेकंड जस्ट होल्ड ऑन फॉर अ सेकंड आपको नहीं did we not discuss 18th century peasant no 19th century peasant and tribal revolts okay tribal also we did not discuss कोई बात नहीं we'll discuss okay now let me okay we'll discuss it separately don't worry that is an important topic we'll discuss that but one of the first things to know is that India was exporting, so okay, then I'll explain in a bit more detail because it is partly related to the same indigo issue. Indigo was a natural coloring agent or a coloring dye, okay, and this natural coloring agent or coloring dye, indigo, was required for the textile industry. Now, British textile industries were producing goods, textile clothes, and these textile clothes needed to be obviously they would require colors, so they required dyes, and indigo was a natural coloring agent produced in India in large amount. Okay. Now the problem with indigo cultivation was that British required huge demand. British had a huge demand of indigo. The market cash indigo was a cash crop whose market price was good. Okay, but and so it yielded better revenue for the peasants also. They had a better chance of making a profit with cultivation of indigo, but there was a problem. The problem was that sustained cultivation of indigo would reduce the fertility of the soil. So one of the problems was the sustained cultivation of indigo, which would hamper the fertility of the soil. And so because of despite offering a good economic return, not many farmers were interested in cultivating indigo over large parts of their land. They would cultivate some part of their land, but not necessarily significant portions of their land. So not many farmers were keen on cultivating indigo, but the British were keen on procuring a large amount of indigo. That is why during the 19th century also and in 1800s also, they were forcing farmers in the Bengal region to cultivate indigo, which led to the revolt in the Bengal region in the 1800s. 1859-60, there was the indigo revolt. Okay, here is more a similar repeat of that situation, not then in Bengal, but partly in the Bihar regions, okay, where basically again because of the same reasons, the European planters wanted Indian farmers to cultivate indigo. So there was a forced cultivation of what? Indigo. And this forced cultivation of indigo persisted under what was the thin khatia system, in which basically 3 by 20th or CSAT 1 by 6th of the whole land, it was mandatory that every peasant had in the Champaran region had to cultivate 3/20th of the land with indigo. The rest of the land they could cultivate with crops of their choice, but at least 1/6 of their land they must cultivate with indigo, and this indigo would be sold to the Europeans who wanted it as a raw material for their industries. So there is this forced cultivation of indigo which is causing what? Discontent amongst the peasantry. This forced cultivation of indigo would lead to a decline in fertility of soil. would lead to a decline in fertility of soil, yes or no? So that is something which is a problem. Also, on top of that, at the international level, there was the introduction of another set of coloring agents, and they are the synthetic dyes. So, see, indigo was a natural coloring agent, and the 20th century had seen the invention of new kinds of dyes also, and these were the synthetic dyes, which were artificial colors, coloring agents which could be used. Now, this meant that even the earlier the prices of indigo were high, now the prices of indigo are also coming down because there are other alternative agents, coloring agents also available at this point of time. So, you see that all of this led to a discontent of the Indian peasantry in where? Champaran. And Gandhi basically, when he was made aware of all these problems, Gandhi agreed to basically take a closer look and visit Champaran. Gandhi, along with his other Congress associates like Rajendra Prasad, like J.B. Kriplani, many others, decided to pay a visit and take a closer look at the whole situation. And Rajendra Prasad, J.B. Kriplani, others also. And basically he declares that he will soon come and make a visit to Champaran. At this point of time, the district magistrate of Champaran issued prohibitory orders against Gandhi and others, prohibiting them from entering Champaran, as they had no direct reason to visit, and it was believed by the British that this would stoke further trouble. This would spell further trouble, that they will create more discontent, mischief, etc. So, to that extent, what do you see? To that extent, what do you see? That Gandhi, a prohibitory order was extended, and in defiance of this prohibitory order, Gandhi visited Champaran and stayed there for a month. Stayed there for a month, did a door-to-door, visited Champaran, stayed there for a month and did a door-to-door basically campaigning, and went from one village to the other in the Champaran district, talking to the peasants directly, understanding their plight. And on the basis of this, the Congress under Gandhi and Congress leaders prepared a report, and this report they submitted to the British, and they argued for the revoking the Tinkatia system. They argued in this report to the British that the Tinkatia system must rather be revoked. Okay. Also, you see that in top of all of this, the British were also looking to raise the revenue demand from this region. So, the British also wanted to raise the revenue demand from this region. So, in this report, they argued against, Congress leaders including Gandhi argued against the Tinkatia system. And when this report they submitted to the British government then, and Gandhi said that we will basically protest against the Tinkatia system, and it is at this point of time that following the report submission, the British appointed their own committee, and a British appointed committee was made, and Gandhi was made its member. Gandhi was made its member, and this committee recommended what? The abolition of the Tinkatia system and the forced cultivation of indigo. Now please remember from your prelims point of view few things. What is the demand of the Champaran movement? The Champaran movement opposed the cultivation of indigo. True or false? False. Opposed the forced cultivation of indigo. The word force here is very important, because after Champaran movement became successful also, cultivation of indigo did not come to an end. Only the forced cultivation came to an end, and indigo cultivation continued for more than a decade also, later after the Champaran Satyagraha in the same region. What was demanded also anyways was what? End to the forced cultivation of indigo, which was something that was achieved at this point of time. Also, many argue that this was Gandhi's first civil disobedience in India. This was Gandhi's first civil disobedience in India. Now, why is it a civil disobedience? देखिए, what is civil disobedience? Disobedience of civil laws. Where I am saying that, suppose I am telling you all, do not follow the red light, jump the red light. Okay, I am telling you to break a civil law. Okay, so that is something that when I am instigating people or when I am myself deliberately breaking a government law, that is civil disobedience. And where is Gandhi breaking the law here? Gandhi is breaking the law here by entering Champaran even while he was legally prohibited to do so. So one of the things that you recognize from an ethics point of view also is that Gandhi is not for a blind obedience of laws. Gandhi is not saying that just because there is a law in place, you need to obey it. Okay, that is something, and Gandhi is okay with breaking laws, which is actually visible here at this point of time. So this is the first thing that you must know about. These many things you must know about. What is the issue? What is the demand? And what is the outcome of Champaran? Now, first thing, this was the issue. Now, why did Gandhi pick Champaran as an issue? Why do you think? Why do you think that Gandhi picked Champaran as an issue? Because it involved an issue of the peasants. More importantly, it involved the issue of whom? Masses. It involved the issue which directly resonated with the masses, because from Gandhian experiences in South Africa, Gandhi had come to the conclusion that the masses will come out on the streets when what is picked? A issue which is of direct relevance to them. Congress till now has been picking what? Demands. Demand for increased representation in legislative council, Indianization of civil services. How does it affect a common person on the street? Not in any direct manner. For a common person on the street, was the common masses in rural areas was whom? Peasants. And so, if Congress and Gandhi had to resonate with the masses, they must pick up issues close to whom? The masses, or directly close to the peasantry. That is why Gandhi chooses to pick up a peasant issue. That's one. But there were peasants all over the country. Why does Gandhi have to go all the way from Gujarat to Champaran to pick up what? The issue of peasants. Are peasants to har jagah the? Peasants are there in Gujarat also. Bombay region also, Bengal, har jagah hai peasants. Why going all the way only to Champaran? It is a coincidence? The ground में देखने के लिए स्थिति तो हर जगह खराब थी. लोकल्स की पहली बार डिमांड है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं. राजकुमार शुक्ला ने दिल जीत दिया गांधी जी का. So देखिए, the reason for this is actually a bit deeper than this. And this is the reason also visible in Kheda. What is the reason? Is that in Champaran, the conflict is between the Indian peasants, that is the masses, and whom? The European planters or the British planters who wanted this forced cultivation. It does not involve a conflict between Indian peasant and Indian zamindar. While picking up peasant issues, Gandhi was clear and categorical that he did not want to pick up a peasant issue which would pit the demand of Indian peasant against the Indian zamindar, because that would make the zamindar side with whom? British. That is the reason that Gandhi is choosing Champaran to pick up the issue of peasants, because this was one area where peasant issues were directly pitted against the Europeans, not bringing Indian peasants in contradiction with the Indian zamindari class. While Gandhi argued that, so this was one reason, and this becomes even more clear when you look at the second major struggle, and that is in Kheda. After Champaran, the second major struggle that Gandhi picked up is again of the masses, particularly the peasants, and that is in Kheda. You must again know the details about what was the issue in Kheda. What is the issue in Kheda? Okay. Now, basically, when you look at the issue in Kheda, Kheda is a region where in Gandhi's political backyard, Gujarat. That is one reason Gandhi is choosing Kheda. Okay. Then again in Kheda, the issue is that Kheda was under the Rayatwari settlement region. And according, you've seen the movie Lagan? Right? उसमें ये होता है कि अभी इस साल बारिश नहीं हुई तो इस साल क्या माफ कर दीजिए, लगान और revenue collection, right? So according to the British law itself, according to the British law itself, which existed in this region, if the produce in any year was less than 1/3 of that of the normal years, if a produce in any year was less than 1/3 of that of the normal years, then what would happen? Then the farmers were entitled to a tax remission. देखिए, average production used to happen, and there was data about average production over the previous years. If because of low rainfall or flood, etc., if the produce was less than 1/3 of the normal year, of normal year, the peasants were entitled to what? A tax remission. Peasants were entitled to a tax remission, that for that season there will be no tax collection, and this was it was legally defined in the British law. But despite this legal provision, the British revenue collectors were trying to collect what? The British revenue collectors were trying to collect taxes. Okay? The British revenue collectors were trying to collect taxes despite this being squarely what? Illegal. The law itself said that they were entitled to a remission, but they are not granted a remission. But the tax collectors are trying to collect taxes. What is Gandhi saying? Gandhi organized a no rent strike. He is organizing a no rent strike, saying that in the Kheda Satyagraha, no farmer will pay the taxes demanded by the British because we are legally entitled to a remission. So he is leading the Kheda Satyagraha and organizing peasants into a no rent strike, after which the British government was forced to intervene and stop revenue collection from the region. So that is about Kheda. That is there. You need to know again, in neither Champaran, nor Kheda, nor Ahmedabad, Gandhi is going to demand what? Overthrow of British. ऐसे नहीं कि option आया that Champaran Satyagraha demanded overthrow of British. True. अरे there is no, just because there is overthrow of British and every, Indians wanted to overthrow British, that means that in every struggle they want to overthrow the British. Here they are picking up peasant demands, demanding concessions from the British to reduce what? Peasant का सबसे बड़ा problem, what is the burden of taxation? That is what they are trying to do. And Gandhi is trying to resonate what? With the masses by picking up the issues that directly affected the masses. And the masses were peasantry in the rural areas. Again, this is the area under the Rayatwari settlement region, which allows Gandhi to. So Gandhi is not saying that no tax campaign in an area which is under what? Zamindari. Because that will harm not just British interests but also the interests of Indian zamindars. And that will give Congress a anti-zamindar orientation. That is something that Gandhi wants to avoid. because he doesn't want that the zamindars must side with whom? British. Now, also remember one thing from your prelims point of view, that nowhere till independence that Congress gave a call for redistribution of land to the peasantry or abolition of zamindari. अगर ऐसा कहीं नहीं लिखा आएगा, किसी भी ऑप्शन में ऐसा लिखा आता है that say in Kheda, Congress demanded redistribution of land to the peasantry, it's a wrong statement. कोई ऐसा सत्याग्रह है ही नहीं Indian independence struggle में where Congress is demanding that on any peasant issue the peasants must be given ownership of land or permanent property rights in land. ऐसा कोई सत्याग्रह नहीं है. क्यों नहीं है ये बाद में आएंगे, but partly the reason is this, that Congress, if Congress was to say that the land must be taken away from zamindar and given to the peasantry, who will turn against the Congress? Zamindars. Congress does not want such a situation. There's another reason which is often not said. A number of prominent Congress members were themselves big zamindars. Okay, for example, Lajpat Rai himself owned 40 acres of land in Lahore, in the city of Lahore. Okay, so you can understand why they are not very keen on abolition of zamindari system. Okay. Now, the other thing, so now that is one thing about Kheda. Kheda is also called as the first non-cooperation launched by Gandhi in India. देखिए, what is non-cooperation, what is civil disobedience, ये difference clear कर लीजिए, इसमें कुछ नहीं है. Suppose I tell you, देखिए, why do you want to join civil services? You will just get 1 lakh rupees as salary. Everybody will think you are very rich and you are very powerful, but you know that that's not the case. Neither are you rich nor are you very powerful, and you will have no time for your family, etc. You can make much more money by working in the private sector and get offs also and relax also. All that is there. Don't become a government teacher. Because there is no infrastructure, students don't want to study. Don't become a government doctor. Don't join the army also. You can get a 6-figure salary somewhere else. Why do you want to lay down your lives? Nationalism is anyway served on Facebook and WhatsApp either. So don't do any of it. Don't join the army. Don't join civil services. Don't become a teacher. Don't become a government teacher, government doctor, civil servant. Don't join the army. Hypothetically, in a world where people refuse to join government services, and that is going to make that you are not breaking any law. By not joining the army, India does not have a military conscription. By not joining the army, you are not breaking any law. So if you don't join army, civil services, etc., then the government will be deprived of your cooperation. And the government will be deprived of your cooperation. Can it carry out its rule? No, it cannot. Without the cooperation of citizens, it is difficult for the government to rule the subjects. Remember, India is being ruled by merely 85,000 Britishers operating at a point of time in India. So, merely 85,000 individuals could not administer or rule India without the support of Indians. Okay, so whether by picking up government jobs, or cooperating with the government, you are actually aiding British rule. If you do non-cooperation, you're not going to aid British rule. However, what is the difference between non-cooperation and civil disobedience? Disobedience means breaking laws. If I tell you, bhai, don't pay taxes, that will amount to what? This will amount to a disobedience of law. If I tell you to jump the red light, that will amount to disobedience of laws. So disobedience, civil disobedience is about breaking laws. Non-cooperation is not about breaking any law. It is simply refusing to cooperate with the government. And it is here, the government is itself actually breaking law by trying to collect taxes. So if you don't cooperate with the government, you are not actually breaking any law. You are the one who is actually not simply refusing to cooperate with the British without even breaking a law. So that is non-cooperation. So this is Gandhi's first non-cooperation in India. If Champaran and Kheda were the first peasant issues picked up by Gandhi in India to connect with the masses in rural areas, the Ahmedabad mill strike that is discussed next, that we are discussing next, ये आने की भी घनघोर संभावना है next year, right? Because that will be 2019. आपको 100 साल हो जाएंगे अहमदाबाद मिल स्ट्राइक, right? So that is there. So Ahmedabad mill strike. देखिए अहमदाबाद मिल स्ट्राइक is an issue which is picked up where? Ahmedabad mill strike is an issue which is picked up in Ahmedabad. The mill owners in Ahmedabad were actually Indian mill owners. Most of them, there were three major industrial centers in India. One was in Bengal, in Calcutta region. The other was in Bombay, in the city in and around Bombay. And within the Bombay province, the other third region was Ahmedabad, where was major textile industries. Ahmedabad, Bombay and Calcutta. Most of the British-owned industries were located in Calcutta, partly in Bombay. Most of Indian-owned industries were located in either the Bombay city or Ahmedabad. So most of the mill owners in Ahmedabad were the Indian mill owners. Some of the prominent ones are G.D. Birla, Jamnalal Bajaj, others. Okay, so G.D. Birla, Jamnalal Bajaj. G.D. Birla, Jamnalal Bajaj and others. Now, one of the first things to know about the Ahmedabad mill strike is what is the issue. The issue, and this is important from your prelims point of view, what is the issue? See, the issue in Ahmedabad is that the workers are demanding a wage hike. See, World War I was a time when Indian industries made good profits. Indian industries made good profits during World War I. Why? Because European industries are collapsing because of the destruction of World War I. And because of the destruction caused by World War I, European industries are collapsing. And so competition from European industries is not there. Indian goods are being exported also to Europe in large amount. So what is happening? Their exports increased and they made good profits. Now when the capitalist class, the industry owners were making good profits, they passed on little to the workers in the form of increasing wages. Okay, and so one of the first demands of the workers was this Ahmedabad mill strike is happening in 1919, is a 1/3 increase in wages was demanded. A 1/3 increase in wages was demanded, or a 33% wage hike was demanded by the workers. Also, some pre-existing bonuses which were being given were withdrawn at this point of time by the capitalist class or the mill owners. Now, that is one thing, and these were things like the plague bonus, etc. Certain bonus, etc. were withdrawn from this region. Now, also let me tell you the other issue here was also, so these were the demands of what? The mill workers who were already on a strike. The mill workers were already on a strike because of this issue. Okay, and during this strike, one of the local leaders who was also associated with Gandhi and Congress played a critical role in organizing this strike also, and this was Anusuya Sarabhai. So Anusuya Sarabhai was one of the prominent leaders here, who was a woman trade union leader. And again, whenever you find women, etc., it's pretty important from your examination point of view. Anusuya Sarabhai was a prominent women trade union leader here who played an important role in organizing the strike, and she was a close associate of Gandhi as well. Okay, and Anusuya Sarabhai is an important name that you must remember. Gandhi is finally intervening in this matter. Firstly, Gandhi says, let's talk. Gandhi is talking here. Gandhi does not immediately go on a strike. He doesn't immediately go on a strike, supporting strike, etc. Gandhi says, let's talk to the Indian capitalist class. He supports first a persuasive strategy. Now, he is saying that let me talk to the Indian capitalist class. Here, you know, the Birlas and the Bajaj. And he could talk to the Birlas and the Bajaj because he shared close friendly relations with the Ahmedabad group of Indian capitalist class. तो मोदी जी ने बताया था आपको कुछ टाइम पहले, right? कि Modi ji also had close relations with Indian capitalist class. So even if I have close relations, what is the problem? Basically, so we have another Gandhi anyways today. So that is very nice. So basically, he relied upon a persuasive strategy. And basically, relying upon a persuasive strategy, he said, we'll talk to the whom? The Indian capitalist class. And following Gandhi's persuasion, the Indian mill owners basically agreed to a 20% wage hike. Now, they agreed to an initial 20% wage hike. However, this was found, and with this was with a certain amount of persuasion, they agreed to a 20% wage hike, and following Gandhi's persuasion. But the workers' unions demanded that this was insufficient, and they must be granted a full 1/3 wage hike as demanded. Okay, and it is at this point of time the workers insisted on a full 1/3 wage hike. The workers insisted on a full 1/3 wage hike. And if the workers insisted on a full 1/3 wage hike, you see that what is going to happen? That Gandhi is saying, okay, देखिए अभी पहले ही क्या हो रहा है, ऐसा नहीं है that Gandhi is some god or anything, okay? Because Gandhi is coming up with a proposal trying to intervene in the matter, and it's not that Gandhi said कि चलो I got you 20%, the workers are like okay, Gandhi got us 20%, we should be happy with it. They insist on a full 1/3 wage hike and continuing the strike. At this point of time, Gandhi now goes on a hunger strike. So देखिए आप, अभी मैं एक एग्जाम्पल पे आता हूँ थोड़ी देर में, but Gandhi goes on a hunger strike at this point, demanding a full 1/3 wage hike. And following Gandhi's hunger strike, the Indian capitalist class was forced to relent and were granted a full 1/3 wage hike. Very soon, you will see Modi ji also going on a hunger strike, demanding wage hike for Indian workers. So now, basically, you see, 1918, yes, the Ahmedabad mill strike 1918 stretches out even in 1919. Okay, that is both this, that is fine. Now, the other issue here is also something, and so basically, what is more important? This is issue which is important from prelims point of view. Itna yahan tak. But what I am telling now is more important from mains point of view, and is not written in most of the books that you will read. And that is Gandhi's viewpoints. Gandhi is saying a lot here, okay, which you need to understand. And that is the Gandhian concept. Two concepts I am talking about. One is Satyagrah, and the other is Gandhian concept of trusteeship. एक तो आपने फिर भी सुना होगा सत्याग्रह, दूसरा वाला ट्रस्टीशिप है. Okay, So let's first talk about सत्याग्रह. देखिए, चंपारण वाला सत्याग्रह था, खेड़ा वाला सत्याग्रह था, अहमदाबाद मिल स्ट्राइक सत्याग्रह, सब है सत्याग्रह. व्हाट इज सत्याग्रह? सत्य means truth and agraha means insistence, resistance. Agraha means you are basically insisting upon it. Okay, so a resistance or a insistence to uphold what? Truth. Okay, so Gandhi is basically saying that there are certain principles of satyagrah that must be upheld. Okay, and you can write these down with me. Okay, देखिए कई चीज़ें डिक्टेट कराने था चाप. When I'm writing key points, you can write with me. There are 4 or 5 major principles of satyagrah that Gandhi is saying. Firstly, Gandhi is saying that what about satyagrah? A satyagrah is primarily going to uphold truth. Truthful and just demands. Uphold the truth and truthful and just demands. Secondly, a satyagrah would basically what? Would be essentially a non-violent. A satyagrah would essentially be a non-violent what? Satyagrah will remain truthful and non-violent at all times. Also, a satyagrah is a weapon of the strong and not the weak. And D, I'll explain this point. And D, a satyagrah or a satyagrahi would hate the evil and not the evildoer. Okay, a satyagrahi would hate the evil and not the evildoer. Firstly, it is a weapon of the strong and not the weak. Why? Gandhi is saying that will remain essentially a non-violent movement at all times, even in the face of a grave provocation. Even if the other side is using violence, the satyagrahi will still stay non-violent. If the other side is abusive, is even resorting to the use of violence to suppress a non-violent struggle, then also a satyagrahi will remain peaceful and non-violent at all times, even in the face of provocation. अगर मैं आपको बुरा भला कहूं, आप मुझे in response, you will not adopt the same attitude towards me. It requires what? It requires patience, and more importantly, it requires mental strength. It is not something that a weak person can do. देखिए हमारे यहाँ तो अभी Gandhi would have been alive. तो Gandhi would have said कि अरे you are at 60 kilometers. I don't like it. I want you to give me side on the road. I'm not giving. So मैं आपके आगे जाके गाड़ी रोकता हूँ, फिर बोलता हूँ बाहर निकल. Right? So in that context, you see that Gandhi is arguing that satyagraha cannot be done by somebody who does not have patience and is not ready for a long drawn out struggle. And somebody who is very easily provocated, is not mentally strong, cannot do a satyagraha. And satyagraha requires not just physical strength, but more importantly requires mental strength to persist in a struggle for a long time and not get either easily disheartened or get easily provoked. Contrary to that, today's generation gets easily disheartened and more easily provoked. Right? So that is why he is saying that it is not meant for everybody. Only the one who is strong can do it. Secondly, you will hate the evil and not the evildoer. देखिए ये तो आपने वो लगे रहो मुन्ना भाई में देख. Now why is Gandhi saying so? Because if you say that the person himself is evil, then can you ever talk to the evil? No. If you say that your policies are wrong, it's okay. You can, both the sides can still talk. But if you say that the other person himself is evil, then you can never have negotiations or talks. Even during the freedom struggle, Gandhi never said that ye Irwin to chor hai, chor. He never, जैसे अभी हमारे यहाँ ऐसा होता है, ये तो शहजादा है, ये चोर है, ये भागीदार है, ये चौकीदार है, ये है, मैं तो ये करूँगा, right? So Gandhi is arguing to refrain from any personal attacks and saying that one should not paint the other side as evil. Merely be critical of their policies. Do not make what? Individual attacks. That is what is Gandhi saying is about Satyagraha. चलिए अभी practical case study है ना, case study करा आपने? तो देखिए एक चीज बताइए, आपको चाहिए कार, you written the exam, आपका हो गया यूपीएससी में, अभी then you say I have studied very hard, worked for it, earned it, and now I want my parents to reward me with a car. चलिए आप बोले किसी को कार का शौक नहीं सर, parents I want to go on a trip to Europe for 1 month, relax, see all the beaches, drive on all the roads. Parents say that is not possible. We spent a lot on your study anyways. It is time you pay back rather than demanding more. So you say that is not justified. I'll sit on a hunger strike. I have learned Gandhi and Satyagraha can move mountains. I just want a car or a 1 month holiday. So is it a Satyagraha? You sit on a hunger strike. Abhi, you are not picking up arms against your parents. है ना? You just saying कि मैं खाना नहीं खाऊंगा, ना मैं बात करूंगा, ना मैं खाना खाऊंगा, जब तक मेरी डिमांड नहीं मीट होती. ये जस्ट नहीं है डिमांड. क्यों नहीं है भाई जस्ट डिमांड? ठीक है, जस्ट नहीं है डिमांड. क्यों नहीं है जस्ट? नॉट इन फेवर ऑफ पेरेंट्स, not in favor of greater good of the society. See, so basically Gandhi says Satyagraha is an instrument not for making some personal gains. ये नहीं है कि अरे that आप जाके बैठ गए अमिताभ बच्चन के घर के बाहर, बोला कि नहीं आओ मिलो. Not making personal gain. So Gandhi is arguing that Satyagraha is not an instrument which is actually being used for making any personal gains. And more importantly, which demand is a just demand? Gandhi is saying that you read in NCRTs. In every NCRT there is what? Gandhi's, right? Where Gandhi is saying that which demand is a just demand? A demand which basically does what? Which basically Gandhi says that if you have to determine whether any of your actions or anybody's action is a justified action or not, you should think about the poorest and the most needy you have come across, and then see whether it promotes their welfare or not. If it promotes their welfare, it will. Just a second, I'll give you time to ask. Just एक रुक जाए, मैं बताता हूँ क्या करेंगे, ठीक? So Gandhi is saying that if that it is not for maintaining personal gains, but primarily for meeting the greater good and also the ensuring the well-being of the most needy, the most poor, the most needy that you have ever come across. So ensure the well-being of the most poor and needy. That is something that must be done. Now, that is something that Gandhi is saying, that this is what is a justified demand. तो आप जब भी गांधी एथिक्स की बात करें तो आप ऐसे बात कर सकते हैं. सपोज आई से दैट देयर इज अ सत्याग्रह अगेंस्ट व्हाट? Against that government is acquired land but has not paid compensation. Has acquired land but has not paid compensation to the farmers. Farmers are opposing government's land acquisition, not giving up their lands, sitting on a fast until death. Then that will be a सत्याग्रह. ऐसे नहीं कि अभी आप ये नहीं बोल सकते कि सर ये फार्मर तो इसलिए बोल रहा है क्योंकि उसकी लैंड चली गई. अरे इट इज लैंड इज बीन टेकन अनजस्टली, that they deserved a compensation and the government was expected to pay them a compensation but did not. So that is, and the farmer obviously is also one of the most poorest and the needy, who's being rightfully denied or wrongfully being denied of their share. So this is one criteria, this is not the only criteria. Okay, अभी ऐसा नहीं है कि I am taking away your right to privacy, you can't do a सत्याग्रह against it. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि सर वो तो पुअर लोगों को राइट टू प्राइवेसी होता ही नहीं है, या मिडिल क्लास को राइट टू प्राइवेसी इज मिडिल क्लास कंसर्न होता है. अरे भाई, राइट टू प्राइवेसी इज एवरीबॉडी इज कंसर्न. सो इट्स नॉट दैट a satyagraha can be done only on this ground, but Gandhi is suggesting these are definitely those demands which are just. That is Gandhi's talisman. Now आप बोल रहे हैं कि सर ये क्या लिखवाएंगे कि नहीं लिखवाएंगे, पीपीटी में है कि नहीं है. चंपारण, खेड़ा, Ahmedabad, all of this is there in the PowerPoint presentation also. These points, 4 principles of Satyagraha is also there in the PowerPoint presentation. What is not there is this. ये कुछ ethics में भी आप पढ़ेंगे, है ना. So but I am still doing that overlap for you so that आप वहाँ पे कहीं भी आएंगे तो ये आपको idea आ जाएगा. Okay. Now there is one more idea. Yes. Yeah. So now her question stems from the fact कि भाई sir, you said Gandhi is categorical, not picking up demands against the zamindars. Then why is Gandhi picking up demands against the Indian capitalist class? See, that is what is Gandhi doing. I am coming to that concept immediately. The Gandhian concept of trusteeship. So if Gandhi has intervened in Ahmedabad, do you think that Indian capitalist class is going to be happy with Gandhi? Yes, no. सोच लीजिए. देखिए, हमारा टीचर वाइवा में यही कहता था. You sure? अगर आपने बोल दिया एक बार तो आप पीछे नहीं हटना है, ठीक है. जो हो उसको देख लेंगे. ऐसे you sure? और अब नहीं भी है तो क्या करें? No sir, I'm not sure. ऐसे देखिए, it answers your question also that Gandhi's intervention in the Ahmedabad mill strike is something that is the Ahmedabad capitalist class likes Gandhi's intervention. They are not against Gandhi's intervention and they are happy with Gandhi's intervention. But you will say, sir, they are being forced to give a 1/3 wage hike and Gandhi is sitting on a hunger strike against them. Why is it that the capitalist class is going to be happy with Gandhi? The reason for this is his concept of what he said on these hunger strikes. The Gandhian concept of trusteeship. Gandhi is saying, and I'll explain this firstly. To understand this firstly, you need to understand something else. There, 1917 is the time when in Russia there is what is called as the Russian Revolution. In the Russian Revolution, I'm just briefly telling right now, what is happening is that the monarchy in Russia is overthrown. By whom? By the Bolsheviks. First came the Mensheviks, then came the Bolsheviks. Is overthrown by the Bolsheviks. These Bolsheviks are led by people like Lenin, etc. They overthrow the monarchy and they overthrow the capitalist class also in Russia, and they, along with the worker unions, basically took control of the government also and took control of What? Industries. These Russian revolutionaries were inspired by what? Marxist ideas. They are inspired by Marxist ideas. Now, अब आप बोलेंगे कि सर Marxist ideas कहाँ से आ गए एकदम से? Right? Now, I'm just taking 2 minutes to explain the broadly Marxist idea, क्योंकि हम बार-बार इस पाएंगे. Okay? पहली बात, economy is going on right now? No. Okay. So, one of the first things to understand about Marxist ideas is this, that that in the Marxist worldview, it is said that there are two groups in any industrial society. There are two groups. One is the group of workers and the other is the group of owners, and these owners are known as these private owners of industries are known as the capitalists, and these workers are known as the proletariat. Okay? Now, what do the workers own? The workers own their labor. And what do the capitalists own? They own the machines, or what are also called as the means of production. Now, what Marx says, that suppose a good is sold for 100 rupees, then, and if say 60 rupees is the profit, this profit goes to whom? The capitalist class. And profit is calculated how? By reducing the cost of what? Reducing the cost of production. And the cost of production involves the cost of raw materials and the wages. So once you deduct wages and raw material cost, what is left is profits. But Marx says that the true creator of value is what? True creator of value is labor. अरे ये लकड़ी पड़ी थी, but out of this lakdi, only when somebody chiseled out this piece of furniture is when it is actually getting its labor. Lakdi again alone did not have any value. Only when out of that wood a table is chiseled out is when it is getting its value. So in that context, the true creator of value in any economic productive activity is labor. And that is why they must own all the profits, and they must basically own all the profits. But profit is actually going to whom? Capitalist class. And why does the profit go to capitalist class? Because they own the means of production. They own what? Means of production. And by owning the industries, by owning the factories, by owning the machines, they basically get to own the profits. And what are these profits? These profits are actually what? These profits are actually unpaid labor. These profits are what? Unpaid labor. Is that clear? These profits are unpaid labor. ऐसा क्यों कह रहे हैं? क्योंकि ये कह रहे हैं कि जो profit है, that is the labor which should have been paid. That is the labor, that is the wage which should have been paid. Because market price तो 100 है. That is coming from labor. But you are paying them only 40. 60 तो you are keeping in your own pocket. They are saying that the capitalist class is a parasite on the working class, who is the true creator of value. And how can the capitalist class do so? Because they own the means of production. If the means of production are owned by whom? Labor. If the labor captures the means of production, then they will get to keep the profits also. And what will end? Economic disparity or inequality. And it will make whom more prosperous? The workers. So they are saying that the capitalist class must be overthrown. The workers must capture the means of production. How will they capture the means of production? By persuading capitalist class, telling them, please leave. We work here, we also want to own it. No, by the use of force, by the use of violence, kill them all. Right? Involved a direct violence against the capitalist class, overthrowing them with the use of force. This is the model of whom? Marxist thinking. Basically, Marxist thinking, देखिए वो उसको फैंसी तरीके से कहा जाता है, that is a revolutionary struggle which will overthrow the exploiters and give the control of means of production to the exploited. अभी सुनने में अच्छा लग रहा है? So that is something that Marxist thinking talks about. So this is the model on which the Russian Revolution is capturing power. पर गांधी क्या बोलेगा? What is Gandhi going to say about the Russian Revolution? Is he going to find that very inspiring? No. Gandhi is an individual who wants what? Ends and means, both to be justified. Right? So Gandhi is not really interested in the Russian Revolution. And when the Russian Revolution happens and it is successful in Russia, what is happening after this is that worker unions in Europe, in Germany, in France, etc., is there also worker unions are now being dominated by the communist parties which are emerging. The communist, it is the Bolsheviks who term themselves as the communist party. अभी आप बोलेंगे कि सर कम्युनिज्म क्या होता है? अभी आप भूल जाइए कि कम्युनिज्म क्या होता है, आपको कोई मतलब नहीं है. ओके, कम्युनिज्म से सोशलिज्म की जब बात आएगी तो मैं समझाऊंगा व्हाट इज सोशलिज्म एंड व्हाट इज द ओवरलैप विद कम्युनिज्म, वो होगा तो मैं वहां बता दूं. बट दे आर द कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी एंड द सक्सेस ऑफ रशियन रेवोल्यूशन इज इंस्पायरिंग वर्कर यूनियंस इन ईस्टर्न यूरोप कि ये जब रशिया में हो सकता है तो हम भी कर सकते हैं. इंडियन वर्कर्स आर ऑल्सो गेटिंग इंस्पायर्ड because the idea is that Soviet Union will support worker struggles everywhere and Indian worker unions are also getting inspired कि जब वहाँ हो सकता है तो हम यहाँ भी कर देंगे. So you see the Arab Spring, Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, Syria, right? So ऐसे होता है. So in that context, Gandhi is arguing कि ये रशियन रेवोल्यूशन वाले आइडियाज आर नॉट अ वेरी गुड आइडिया. गांधी सेइंग ये अच्छी बात नहीं है. सो बेसिकली गांधी सेइंग वी हैव एन ऑल्टरनेटिव मेथड ऑफ व्हाट? वी हैव एन ऑल्टरनेटिव मेथड ऑफ रिजॉल्विंग व्हाट? Class conflicts. What is this alternative method? This is his method of trusteeship. Gandhi is saying, firstly, Gandhi rejects the use of violence. That is there. Then Gandhi is saying that the capitalist class must realize, he is saying that it is the responsibility of the capitalist class to realize that A, what? It is the responsibility of the capitalist class to realize what? That the capitalist class is merely a trustee of the profits or wealth made by industries. Is merely a trustee? Yes. Is merely a trustee of the profits or wealth made by whom? Industries. Okay, it is a trustee. Trustee meaning that he is saying that capitalist class needs to understand that the profits made are not a private property of the capitalist class. मतलब basically they are saying that if the Tata TCS is making 1,000 crore profit, then Mr. Ratan Tata must not think that it is his private property. Rather, he should understand that he is merely a trustee of the wealth or the profit generated by the industry. Okay. So, and then if he is a trustee, then basically the workers and the organization has trusted Mr. Ratan Tata that he will use these profits for what? What will they use these profits? To build an antenna? So that in first player, on the first floor, Mr. Ambani sleeps on the second floor, his wife sleeps on the third floor, his child sleeps on the fourth floor, they have spa on the fifth floor, they have helicopter. What will he use this wealth for? देखिए, अगेन मैं आपको बड़ा सिंपल सा एग्जांपल दे रहा हूँ, ऐसे नहीं कुछ भी फालतू बात नहीं करता हूँ मैं, आपको ऐसा लगे कि मैं कुछ भी बोल रहा हूँ. Is Mr. Ambani justified in making a 1,000 crore or whatever crore जितने का भी बनाओ यार वो बड़ी बहुमंजिली इमारत एंटेला? Legally he is well within his rights to use the wealth as he wishes to do. But a Gandhian concept of trusteeship would argue that this is firstly a naked display of wealth. है ना, ये पैसे का नंगा नाच. Second, also it is something which goes against his concept of trusteeship, because Gandhi is saying that this, if the profits made are not a private property of the capitalist class, they must be, these profits must be used for what? For the welfare of workers, of the industries and of the larger society. But what if, देखिए इसका एग्जाम्पल क्या है, I'll come to in a minute. But what if the capitalist class ignores this trusteeship and violates this principle of trusteeship? Then what will happen? Then Gandhi is saying, then what should happen is that workers must resort to non-violent protests to demand their rights, or to demand or to make their just demands. So firstly, protest, is it the first step or the last step? Last step. Then protest must happen through violence or non-violence? So first thing, is capitalist class going to like Gandhi or not? Are the other alternative was what? Russian Revolution. On the other side is the ideas of the Russian Revolution, which are saying कोई बात कुछ नहीं, पकड़ो निकालो मारो और take over the control of industry. दूसरी तरफ गांधी बोल रहा है बात सुनो, persuasion करो, realize your responsibility, even if you don't realize. Non-violent protest है जी. Gandhi's ideas thus are not something which the Ahmedabad group of capitalist class find objectionable. In fact, they find those ideas as a source of relief. Okay. So, कि जो होनी है बात, there is not going to be a use of violence against whom? The capitalist class. Okay. Now, what are the examples of this? Before you have any doubts, what are the examples of this? Is what? When you look at the idea of CSR. देखिए पहले तो आप ये देखिए, जैसे टाटास के पास क्या है जमशेदपुर में, टिस्को, तो टाटा ने सब बनाया वहाँ, सिर्फ ऐसे नहीं स्टील प्लांट बनाया, दे मेड स्कूल्स ऑल्सो, राइट, सो दे मेड स्कूल्स ऑल्सो. ये स्कूल में कौन पढ़ेगा? वर्कर्स चिल्ड्रन. दे वुड स्टडी इन दी स्कूल्स ऑफन एट लिटिल कॉस्ट और नो कॉस्ट. दैट इज एट लीस्ट द आइडिया. अभी कितना इम्प्लीमेंट हो रहा है वो आप अलग बात है, लेकिन बेसिकली दैट इज डेफिनेटली द आइडिया दैट स्कूल्स मस्ट बी सेट अप फॉर द वेलफेयर ऑफ द फैमिली ऑफ द वर्कर्स एंड ऑल्सो फॉर द लार्जर society. Also, when you look at things like, when you look at the Tatas, the formation of things like the Indian Institute of Science, or the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, or one TIS, the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. I mean, this is a way of giving back to the society. Okay, so that is part of what you can also say as philanthropic capitalism, or which you can also say as corporate social. अभी ये एक और कॉन्सेप्ट है जो बार बार आप सुनते रहते हैं, corporate social responsibility. This is a way of corporates realizing their social responsibilities, which can also said to be as deriving their inspiration from Gandhian concept of trusteeship. CSR का बहुत critique भी है. मैं CSR नहीं पढ़ा रहा हूँ आपको, but मैं आपको बस broad बता रहा हूँ that there is a certain kind of a certain kind of interlink with this idea. Okay. Now, so this is basically you see that Gandhi's viewpoint on the concept of trusteeship, which is a non-violent method of resolving what? Class conflict. That is something that Gandhi is proposing at this point of time. देखिए, अभी CSR की बात हो ही रही है. India has a law now कि for companies up till above a certain turnover and up till a certain turnover, some 2 to 3% of the profits or whatever annually of the last 3 years का average, वो you will have to mandatorily put in through CSR. There is a company's law. Okay, तो देखिए क्या है कि in 2014 Modi ji said that by 2015 all government schools, by 2019 anyways Bharat will be Swachh, and including the Ganga. So but apart from that, basically there will be toilets also, sanitation coverage will increase. So in 2014 by making this announcement, Modi ji said that his vision and dream is that by next year, that is 2015, all government schools must have functional toilets, so that especially children and especially adolescent aged girls do not find it as an obstacle to reach out to education in schools. So schools must have toilets, and within the next year toilets will be constructed across every government school, etc. And for this he encouraged the private sector also to contribute. Okay, he encouraged the private sector also to contribute and take up activities under CSR for this. Now, but next year there is no discussion in the speech, no white. Next year's Modi ji did not tell us from the Red Fort whether his dream was fulfilled or not, or it merely remained a dream, or there was no white paper on this whether all government schools today have toilets or not, which are functional. Okay, so that is there, but at least it is one way that you look at that CSR can also build convergence between the state and the private sector, right? So that is also an idea. Gandhian concept of trusteeship gives a way for the private sector to contribute to the welfare of the society and ensure that the profits are plugged back into the society. That is there, and do not result in more antillas. So from Gandhi's viewpoint, antilla may not be morally justified, even if it would be legally justified. तो एथिक्स में आप लिख सकते हैं ये खुल के. ओके, यही देखिए मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ, एक रीज़न है कि एथिक्स में नंबर अभी कम आ रहे हैं और ये कम ही आने वाले हैं बहुत साल तक, इज़ प्राइमरीली बिकॉज वेन एवर यू आर लुकिंग फ्रॉम एथिक्स पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, तो आप का वही होता है, एक वो आप अभी पढ़ेंगे पहाड़ा, you will learn a table जैसे होता है ना 2 to the 4, 2 5 10, you will learn utilitarian, Kantian, and basically you will talk about utilitarian, you will talk about Kantian. यही आपका चलता रहेगा, deontological utilitarian, deontological utilitarian. Indian traditions also talk about a much bigger standard, and one of those which is often quoted is Gandhi. So this is something that is there. ठीक है, अभी हम वापस आ जाते हैं. So if this much is clear, now let's move on to what is happening after this period. Okay, now what is happening after this period? What is happening after this period is What is happening after this period is what? That by 1918-19, Gandhi has picked up three major issues and registered three major concessions, either from the British or from the Indian capitalist class. He's resonating his demands, or he's increasing his appeal amongst the working class as well as the peasantry. Now we see, now you have to write down basically that what is happening after this is that from 1917 to 1921. Okay, 1917 to 1921, there are a number of things happening. The major flashpoint is 1919 onwards. 1919, what is happening? World War I came to an end. By 1919, World War I came to an end. And as World War I came to an end, the long-standing demand of Home Rule League, Congress, Muslim League, all of that was what? Genuine devolution of power when? After World War I. So as World War I came to an end, आप ऐसे ही लिख लीजिए जैसे मैं लिख रहा हूँ, क्योंकि आपसे जो यहाँ सवाल पूछा जाएगा वो बेसिकली प्रीलिम्स में ही पूछा जाएगा. अभी मैं जो अब नेक्स्ट पोर्शन बात कर रहा हूँ वो प्रीलिम्स के लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है. तो ऐसे लिख लीजिए, वो लेंदी पैराज में लिखने का कोई पॉइंट नहीं है, वो आपको वैसे भी पावर पॉइंट प्रेजेंटेशन में मिल जाएंगे बहुत सारे पॉइंट्स. बट आप जैसे मैं लिख रहा हूँ वैसे लिखिए, बहुत ईजी टू रिवाइज होगा एंड प्रीलिम्स के लिए याद रखने के लिए भी. दैट वर्ल्ड वॉर वन कम्स टू अ एंड. As World War I comes to an end, basically what is happening is that the Congress, Home Rule League and the Muslim League demanded what? Self-government. The British response was the Montagu-Chelmsford reforms, which led to what? The Government of India Act 1919, which led to the British coming up with the Government of India Act 1919. ठीक है? Now, basically the British introduced the Government of India Act 1919 based on the recommendations of the Montagu-Chelmsford Committee in 1919. Okay? Now, this is supposed to give what? Self-governance, right? And we will discuss the provisions of this separately. But for reasons that I'll explain later, Government of India Act 1919 is equal to Kejriwal. Okay. Best way to remember, 2014 से तो मैं यही गा रहा हूँ कि केजरीवाल. Okay? That is Montagu-Chelmsford reforms. How? That I'll explain later. Is Kejriwal very happy with his powers in Delhi? No. Similarly, Congress is also not very happy with the Government of India Act 1919. Why? Are almost the same reasons that Kejriwal has with Delhi, लेकिन हम बाद में बताऊंगा वो, and we'll discuss Government of India Act separately. So the Congress is not very happy because it feels that its objective of self-government is being left unmet. So Congress response is what? That it is dissatisfied with. Why is it dissatisfied? I'll come into it when I'll discuss the Government of India Act separately. And these separate provisions are important from your prelims point of view. Okay, keep that in mind. Separate provisions are important from your prelims point of view, and I'll discuss them separately. Now, 1919 is also the year when a few other things are being discussed. And the British introduced this Government of India Act 1919, right? And this is partly to placate the Indian section partly to placate the Indian section and meet their demand. But बाकी उन्होंने कहा कि those who feel their demands are not met and those who continue to protest against the British rule, उनके लिए भी हमारे पास है. And that is the Rowlatt Act. So basically, in 1919, the British also introduced what? The Rowlatt Act. The British also introduced what? The Rowlatt Act. The British also introduced the Rowlatt Act. Now, the British introduced the Rowlatt Act, and what did this act say? In the sense that this act is saying it is primarily aimed at doing what? Aimed to crack down on what? On anti-British protests. But how? देखिए, how did it aim to crack down on anti-British protests? How did it aim to crack down on the anti-British protests? Basically, by giving what? Vast powers to the police. देखिए, who is going to crack down on protests? The police. अभी पुलिस को you need to give them more powers if you want them to operate freely without any fear. So they gave vast powers to the police under this act, and ये सब पूछा जाता है prelims में. They've asked before also, what was the Rowlatt Act about? Okay, it gave vast powers to the police to do what? To do all that you want Singham to do. कि अरे अभी कुछ नहीं, कोई बस बंदूक निकालो और चालू हो जाओ. So in that context, गंगा जल. So basically, to imprison an individual without warrant or a trial. देखिए, one of the conventions which later in India is also becoming a fundamental right is that once an individual is arrested by the police, then the individual has to be produced within the court of law within 24 hours. Okay? And once, suppose I say कि आपने चोरी की, so I basically take you under police custody. Within 24 hours, I have to produce you in front of the court. I have to inform the court and you of the grounds on which you have been arrested. Why? Because then you can prepare your own defense. You can hire a lawyer. अगर आपको यही नहीं पता है कि आप किस मामले में आप अंदर हैं, तो आप अपना डिफेंस कैसे करेंगे, right? So you will see later that one of the principles of natural justice is that every person will be given a chance to present their defense, है ना? And no one man shall be a judge in their own case, etc. वो सब बातें अलग है, लेकिन एक simple basic idea ये है. But how here they are saying that any individual, imprison an individual without a warrant or a trial who is suspected of what? Who is suspected of anti-British activity. Who is suspected of an anti-British activity. Arey, what is anti-British? That is not defined. Meaning anything can be anti-British. If you oppose a British policy, that can be seen as anti-British. You can be put in jail without a trial by the police, needs no warrant, put in jail, not informed. तो अभी आप जेल में रहिए जब तक पुलिस चाहे. There is no need to produce you for in front of court. जब तक कोर्ट के सामने ही नहीं जाएंगे तो बेल कहाँ से होगी? अरे बेल तो तब होगी जब आप जाएंगे कोर्ट के सामने. जब कोर्ट के सामने पेश करने की ही जरूरत नहीं है. There is no foundation to immediately present you in front of the court of law and inform you of the grounds of arrest. You cannot seek a bail also. Basically, this was known as the Rowlatt Act, was also known as the Black Bill. Why? Because it is giving vast powers to the police, imprison, and this would basically curb any political protests. It would curb any political protests. So, there is Congress, members are opposing both the Government of India Act 1919. The Congress is opposing both the Government of India Act 1919 and the Rowlatt Act, saying that this is an act which will curb political democracy, which will curb any kind of protest, and is giving the vast powers to the police to crack down on any protest which is unjustified. And this is what is the Rowlatt Act. सीधा question आता है prelims में, what was the Rowlatt Act about? अरे who introduced Sidney Rowlatt, when was it introduced, ऐसा कोई question नहीं आएगा कि अभी कौन से महीने में हुआ, 1919 के अप्रैल में हुआ कि मार्च में हुआ, कि कोई नहीं पूछा आपसे, है ना? So just this is what you need to remember. Now Gandhi and Congress said that they are opposed to this. What did they do? They launched a anti-Rowlatt what? अरे सत्याग्रह. Again, just because a law is passed, Gandhi would say that you do not need to blindly obey it. Okay? So just because ये लिखा है कानून में, ये काम करना आप, you are not bound to do it. You are free to break a law. Okay? And that is why they are saying we'll launch an anti-Rowlatt satyagrah and protest against this act. Again, in 1919. All other things happening in March, April 1919. In these satyagrahs, basically the British government cracked down on these satyagrahs and imposed the martial law. You've written this? Right? And the British government cracked down on these satyagrahas and imposed the martial law and prohibiting any public gatherings, and tried to cramp down on the anti-Rowlatt satyagrahas also. At this point of time, when the martial law was in operation in Amritsar and in the Punjab region, you see in these anti-Rowlatt satyagrahas, etc., a number of local prominent leaders like Saifuddin Khichlu and Satyapal Singh had been arrested by the British during the anti-Rowlatt satyagrahas. Okay? And the local people had assembled where? Had assembled in the Jallianwala Bagh. The local people had assembled in the Jallianwala Bagh, and Jallianwala Bagh on the occasion of Baisakhi, which was the festival with harvest festival, right? And this is the time when the martial law is in force. And these they had assembled in the Jallianwala Bagh on the occasion of Baisakhi, and where this was a peaceful non-violent gathering in which a number of speeches were also to be given about the release, demanding the release of Satyapal Singh and Saifuddin Khichlu. Okay? Release of, ये नाम पता होना चाहिए आपको, release of Satyapal Singh and Saifuddin Khichlu. So this is something that they are demanding. Okay, now that is their demand. Now at this point of time, the SP at this point of time in Amritsar is General Dyer, and he ordered the troops to march in and open fire on the protesters. And General Dyer ordered the troops to fire, in which more than 300 people were killed. And what? And more than 300 people were killed according to official estimates. Unofficial estimates say that more than 1,000 people were killed. Okay, so and the British troops kept on firing till their ammunition was done away with, and basically that led to a large death of large number of people. The Congress is devastated at this incident and and argues that, and Gandhi and Congress, they are completely shaken by this incident, and they argue that this is unacceptable. They argued that this is unacceptable. This is a event which cannot be left unpunished. Okay, and Gandhi went on to say so much that you've written this. Everybody, written. So basically, Gandhi is saying that this cannot be left unpunished. What is going to happen? What is going to happen is that Gandhi says that the Jallianwala Bagh incident cannot be left unpunished, and Gandhi says that if, and this is happening in April, that if the Battle of Plassey is with which the British established, or the British established their foundation in India, Jallianwala Bagh incident has shaken that foundation. It will be the beginning of end of British rule in India, because there had been before the Jallianwala Bagh incident, there had been no such naked display of brutal aggression in the 20th century. It is only perhaps such a large number of civilians under British rule had not died in one go by the excessive use of force. Okay, so and that is something that they said is, Gandhi said that this is what has happened in Jallianwala Bagh will continue to happen, as this is the price that we pay for our enslavement to the British. So the Jallianwala Bagh incident, Gandhi says, cannot be left unpunished, and basically they demanded an inquiry into the excessive use of force in dealing with this incident. See, if you break a law, abhi main bolu, bhai, law is you should not jump the red light. We are very serious about tackling this problem. तो क्या करते हैं? Whoever jumps the red light, shoot them. ऐसे क्या ट्रैफिक पुलिस को बोला कुछ नहीं है, यहाँ बैठो, ये लो बंदूक, जो आए जो जंप करे उड़ा दो. Just because you break a law, देखिए सारी ethical problems हैं ये. अरे you are breaking a law, so should I take away your life? The point is, such a excessive use of force, is it justified? So that is there. तो ये एक ethical question क्या है? अरे when is death penalty justified? अरे भाई क्यों? मैं आपको गोली मार दूं तो मुझे, should I be given a death penalty? Then why don't we apply this idea to every? रीजन फाइंड करना चाहिए. फिर मतलब मैं बोलूं कि अभी ये हो रहा था कि आप मेरी पार्किंग स्पेस में लगा दिया, मैं निकला, मुझे गुस्सा आया, ठोक दिया. फिर अभी जस्टिफाइड टू गिव मी डेथ पेनल्टी? नो, माय रीजन इज व्हाट? वैलिड इनफ? इनवैलिड इनफ? अभी हम पार्लियामेंट पर अटैक कर दिया, फिर जस्टिफाइड? फिर जस्टिफाइड है? हाँ, क्यों? पीपल रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स पे अटैक करा तो जस्टिफाइड है डेथ पेनल्टी, पीपल पे किया तो वहां बहुत सारे लोग हैं, उनकी वैल्यू ज्यादा है, उनकी फेस वैल्यू ज्यादा है. देखिए, मैं आई एम नॉट गिविंग यू एनी आंसर, आई एम जस्ट ट्राइंग टू बेसिकली रेज दैट क्वेश्चन. When is death penalty justified, unjustified? There's a certain amount of ethical questions associated with it. ये आपको पता होना चाहिए, कभी ना कभी आएगा ये सवाल एथिक्स में. देख लीजिएगा, ये आएगा, बस आपके समय में आ जाए, आप यही बनाइए. देखिए, मैं भी आपको बता रहा हूँ. बिफोर द मेंस एग्जामिनेशन आई टुक 2 क्लासेस इन पॉलिटिकल साइंस के बैच में, 2 days बैक टू बैक. No, 3 classes, 3 days back to back. उन 3 classes में से 3 क्वेश्चन आए जीएस के पेपर में. 3 topics I took. Election Commission, there was the question. The other question was on CAG. There was one class I took on CAG, one on Election Commission, and the third on Human Rights Commissions. एक commissions करके एक पूरा topic है political science के पेपर में. So we took 3 classes, and 3 classes all the 3 questions came. One was overlapping jurisdiction, the other was on CAG, and the third one on VWAT and all those things. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि कुछ भी बकवास कर रहे हैं, लेकिन हाँ, if your day is lucky enough and you have read also and you are lucky enough, तो आपने जो पढ़ा है वो आ जाएगा, है ना. अभी लेकिन इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि you'll always be lucky, right? But you have to do your part. That is why ऐसा नहीं है कि मैं क्लास में कुछ बोल रहा हूँ कि सर वहाँ का कोई चलते चलते उस क्लास में, एक क्लास में दोनों में से किसी ने ऐसी सवाल पूछा, तो एक क्लास में I told about कि जुडिशियल एस्पेक्ट पे बात हो रही थी कि can't CAG take the matter to courts etc. So I said that there is also one thing that you should understand about courts, and that is tribunalization of justice. Tribunalization of justice basically refers to the fact that increasingly the number of tribunals are rising and they are eating out on the jurisdiction of the judiciary. This is the issue that आप पढ़ लीजिएगा. तो जिसने पढ़ लिया होगा वो चौथा क्वेश्चन था, वो भी क्वेश्चन था इसी साल के पेपर में. I am not saying that I have any professing to have any magical powers. बट अगर आपको पता है कि क्या इंपॉर्टेंट है और आप वो ध्यान रखेंगे, तो जब आप एथिक्स पढ़ें तो ये ध्यान जरूर दीजिएगा कि डेथ पेनल्टी रिलेटेड जो एथिकल इश्यूज है, व्हेन इज इट जस्टिफाइड, व्हेन इज इट नॉट जस्टिफाइड, ये आपको पता होना चाहिए. व्हेन इज इन यूथनेसिया जस्टिफाइड, व्हेन इज इट नॉट जस्टिफाइड, व्हाट इज पैसिव यूथनेसिया, व्हाट इज एक्टिव यूथनेसिया, कब क्या जस्टिफाइड है, अरुणा शॉनबाग जजमेंट है, 2-3 और चीजें. तो ये आपको बेसिक पता होना चाहिए. मतलब अगर आप एथिक्स पढ़ रहे हैं और आप मोरालिटी ऑफ लाइफ एंड डेथ ही नहीं पढ़ा, तो फिर क्या एथिक्स पढ़ा. सो दैट इज देयर. नाउ demanded an inquiry into the excessive use of force. So the British said okay, कोई बात नहीं, कर देते हैं इंक्वायरी. They appointed the Hunter Commission. देखिए, they appointed the Hunter Commission, which was to look into whether General Dyer authorized the use of force, whether this was an excessive use of force, and if held responsible, obviously he would be punished for it. So this was primarily a conduct into the use of force. The Hunter Commission was appointed after much of Congress protests, etc. And these Hunter Commission is basically looking into actions of General Dyer. So what do you think Hunter Commission will say? That General Dyer must be suspended from duty.
Yes, sir.
Yes, right. So General Dyer is basically is not at all held guilty. Rather, General Dyer after this time is leaving India and he is retiring back to Britain. He is retiring back to Britain, and in Britain, the nationalist press in Britain wrote articles why Dyer was justified, made a fund which collected £2 lakh to reward the bravery of General Dyer. Okay, so General Dyer received a hero's welcome and the Hunter Commission did not find him guilty of any actions, though he retired to Britain. Okay, so that is something. The Hunter Commission absolved General Dyer of all responsibility, or found that absolved General Dyer and found that there was no excessive use of force. So, bhai, ab to Congress ka dissatisfaction is rising further. That what? There is the Hunter Commission. ये आपको इसलिए पता होना चाहिए, प्रीलिम्स में सीधा क्वेश्चन पूछेंगे. That what was the Hunter Commission appointed for? To look into the excessive use of force in dealing with the Jallianwala Bagh incident. Now, if this is what is the Hunter Commission saying, this is causing more discontent. On top of that, by 1919, there is discontent building up also because of another issue. And that is what? The Khilafat question. Right? So, let me just explain the Khilafat question, then if you have doubt, we can take that. Okay. देखिए, World War I came to an end, and so was what emerged was the Khilafat question. ये भी prelims में पूछा जाता है. Okay, the Khilafat question was basically something जो मैंने आपको पहले भी बताया था. You remember? No? No? Okay. So basically it was the one of the things I told you, that Germany, Austro-Hungary and Ottoman Empire were on one side and they were the losing side. Now, when Ottoman Empire, जब कोई भी side lose होती करती है, तो it is imposed, a treaty is imposed on it, a cost is derived from it. Ottoman Empire is losing, so a cost will be derived from whom? Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire will be forced to bear the costs, right? And to that extent, they decide that we will break the Ottoman Empire into two. One area will go to the British, the other will go to the French. The Ottoman Empire was, if you remember, I told you? No, we have not discussed Ottoman Empire before? We discussed. So the Ottoman Empire, I told you, was ruled by the Caliph. And the Ottoman Empire extended from Turkey, modern day Turkey, up till Iran, up till the borders of Iran, at the bridge of Asia and Europe. The whole Arabian Peninsula region, what you see, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Jordan, Israel, Palestine, jo bhi hai, sab was a part of the Ottoman Empire. And it is ruled by the Caliph. The Caliph is in charge of the key Muslim religious shrines of Mecca and Medina, which are the most important religious shrines. Now, if the Caliph is going to be removed, the Caliph was not merely the political leader here, he is also the religious leader of Muslims all over the world. Just like the Pope. The Pope in Vatican is the religious leaders of all Christians. The Pope is the religious leader of all Christians. Similarly, the Caliph was considered the religious leader of all Muslims because he was in charge of the Muslim religious shrines. So the Khilafat question emerged. Why? Because Ottoman Empire, which lost World War I, was sought to be dismantled. And the Caliph, in charge of Muslim religious shrines, was to be removed. दोनों तरह से लिख सकते हैं, चाहे KHA लिख लीजिए आप खलीफ, चाहे CALIPH लिख लीजिए, दोनों तरीके होते हैं. जजिया लिखने के भी दो तरीके होते हैं, कई शब्दों को लिखने के कई तरीके हैं, है ना. So in that context you see that the Muslim religious shrines were to be, Caliph, which was the leader of the Muslim religious shrines, was to be removed. Okay. Now the Khilafat question demanded what? That the Khilafat question, the whole concern of the Indian Muslims was that the Caliph must not be removed. And Caliph must not be removed, and he must be allowed to retain the control of the Muslim religious shrines and the territories around it. Even if his powers are to be diminished, he must still be allowed to retain the control of the Muslim religious shrines, and he must not be removed. This was the demand of the Khilafat question was raised by two prominent Muslim leaders, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali. Raised by whom? Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali. Okay, so these were two prominent Muslim leaders associated with the Muslim League, and they are also raising this Khilafat question. Finally, the last issue also, so this also is causing what? Discontent amongst primarily Muslims against the British policy. And finally, the last major cause of discontent against the British is what? High prices. देखिए, जीवन में और दुनिया में, in world history, nothing has brought people on streets with more certainty than high prices. Okay, so when we'll study world history, we'll study in French Revolution, people came out on the streets because of food shortages and high prices. In Russia, when Russian Revolution happened, people came out on the streets because of food shortages and high prices. In India, even in 1919, because of World War I, what is happening? Shortages. Indian industries, firstly, the influx of British goods is what? Stopping, because of which good supply is already decreasing. And if there is supply is decreasing and the demand is more, it will lead to high prices, right? So there were shortages of goods, and these shortages of goods had led to high prices throughout World War I also, and that shortages of goods and high prices continued after World War I also. But coming out on the streets during World War I is not a very great idea, because the British would crack down. So high prices is also a cause of what? Discontent amongst the masses. So a discontent for all of this. World War I, Rowlatt Act, basically the discontent with the Government of India Act 1919. The discontent with the Government of India Act 1919, with the Rowlatt Act, with the Jallianwala Bagh incident, with the Hunter Commission report, with the Khilafat question, and with high prices is leading to what? The Khilafat non-cooperation movement. अभी इसी कहानी को हम 4 पेज में लिखते तो उससे क्या ही हो जाता. It's a wastage of time, frankly. Okay, if you can just build all of that together in one page. इन सब पे क्वेश्चन आता है प्रीलिम्स में, ऑन रॉलेट एक्ट, ऑन जलियांवाला बाग इंसिडेंट, ऑन हंटर कमीशन, ऑन खिलाफत क्वेश्चन, एंड वी विल टॉक अबाउट the Government of India Act 1919 in more detail in a minute or two. Dissatisfaction with all of this led to what? That Congress in 1920 in the Nagpur session is saying that we will give a call for non-cooperation movement, and that is where the Congress session in Nagpur in 1920, you see a resolution for non-cooperation movement was, for the Khilafat non-cooperation movement was adopted. A resolution for Khilafat non-cooperation movement was adopted. That is why the Nagpur session is important. And 1921, you see the start of what? Non-cooperation movement. Abhi, if you have written this much, any doubts still here? Who is heading the 1920 session of Congress? I think it is C.R. Das. Most likely. चाहे तो आप क्रॉस चेक कर लीजिएगा, हो सकता है नहीं भी सही हो. लाजपत राय. तो इम्पोर्टेंट एनीवेज हमने इसलिए पहले ही प्रिकॉशन बोल दिया कि मेरे को नहीं है श्योर, वो नहीं याद रहता कौन सा सेशन हेड कर रहा है, अनलेस एंड अनटिल something hugely significant. Gandhi is declared as the leader of the Khilafat non-cooperation movement. Gandhi is to be given the leadership of the Khilafat non-cooperation movement. He is the declared leader of the Khilafat non-cooperation movement, who will take all decisions of how to start the movement or lead the movement. Now, Gandhi is the leader of the Khilafat non-cooperation movement. Now, let me just take a minute here to again point at something, the ethical dimension again of this. देखिए, अभी ऐसी बातें मैं बोलना पसंद नहीं करता हूँ, तो अभी अगर इंटरनेट होता, कंप्यूटर होता तो मैं आपको दिखा देता, बोलता नहीं, लेकिन अभी है नहीं तो बोलना पड़ेगा. So basically I think it was last year, yes, I think it was last year when in Jammu and Kashmir basically an individual in Srinagar was tied to a jeep by the army, right? 16 होगा, फिर पता नहीं, मैं साल कमज़ोर है मेरे. So basically there was that incident, right? And that Kashmiri youth in Srinagar was tied to the jeep because there were stone pelting incidents, etc. The army tied him to the jeep, and basically it led to a huge criticism that the army should not have done this, and at this point of time, Partha Chatterjee wrote. Partha Chatterjee is a political scientist. He wrote, is a really pretty prominent one. ऐसे लोग वैसे भी इंडिया में नहीं रहते हैं. So Partha Chatterjee mostly doesn't stay in India anyways. But Chatterjee wrote an article. This is Indian Army's General Dyer moment. Okay. In the Indian Express, he wrote the article that this is Indian Army's General Dyer moment. आप जाएंगे तो आपको मिल जाएगा. फिर किसी ने पूछा, do you repent making such a statement? He says, no, I am all the more convinced. Why? Because then there was an inquiry demanded into the actions, and Mr. Gogoi, some Major Gogoi, basically was the one who had given the order of tying this individual to the jeep, and then the army chief was Bipin Rawat, and the Bipin Rawat said, ordered an inquiry. The inquiry found that Mr. Gogoi had done an excellent job. He was given a bravery medal. Okay, so and then Partha Chatterjee said that. So basically, justified, more convinced than ever that this is Indian Army's General Dyer moment. Now, whether it is, firstly, it is not legal. It is a gross violation of. It's not even legal. But the Indian Army argued that basically this is not a conventional war. It is an unconventional situation which requires the use of unconventional methods. Okay, and so this is atypical warfare, and so at times because of operational difficulties or ground level issues, the army may be forced to take certain practical considerations in mind, and that's why it took the decision. So ठीक है, let's say that legally it is, और वैसे legally भी नहीं है, but practically it was something that was the necessity. But a lot of times, again from the case study point of view also, we will say, and utilitarian point आगे आप पढ़ेंगे also, और basically okay छोड़िए वो सब, बस इतना याद रख लीजिए that for now, that what is happening essentially is that it is denting. Ethically, obviously it is wrong because you are using an individual as a shield. Okay, and that is something which is considered an unjust practice in war also. To use a human shield is considered a unjust practice even during times of war. Okay, and even if it is a typical war, it was something that from an ethical point of view would be unjustified. And also more importantly, चलिए छोड़िए ethics की बात, practically also it is denting the army's image, that it is basically acting in such a manner. तो फिर कुछ महीनों बाद क्या हुआ कि एक बाबा है हरियाणा वाले, क्या था उनका नाम मैं भूल गया हूँ, राम रहीम. So basically Babaji was convicted of certain actions, and then he is being imprisoned. Then his supporters came out on the street. Army had to be called in. And the army had to be called in to basically, because these individuals were resorting to violence, etc. Army is called in. Then some people said that why don't we tie Ram Rahim to the jeep and march him around? Peace. Nobody will pelt anything. So that we should make this a standard operating procedure. If there is a religious riot, tie a Hindu, tie a Muslim, march them. Huh?
That was not possible at the time. The crowd was too heavy at one time.
So, okay. So basically, crowd was too heavy, so we could not tie Ram Rahim. In the
Instead of taking him by road, military people took him through helicopter to Tsunami.
Yes, very nice. So basically, the same thing. So this could become a standard operating procedure. Every time there is a conflict zone, India should tie local individuals to the jeep and march them around. We'll set new ways of tackling insurgency. In the long term, this will fuel more insurgency. So I'm saying, but then when others are using it is another matter. When the state agency starts doing it, that is where, you'll see that this is a new law. So in that context, I mean, you can look at it as a case study also.
But the major is now court-martial
अच्छा देखिए अभी आप फेक न्यूज मेरे ऊपर नहीं पेल पाएंगे, ठीक है, इतना मैंने पढ़ रखा है, ठीक है. So the major is not court-martialed because of that issue. The major is court-martialed because of some, basically he was staying in a hotel when he was on operational duty with some individual, etc., which was against their operational guidelines. It has got nothing to do with that inquiry into tying the individual to that jeep. Confidence है, कुछ भी बोले, सब चल रहा है. So that is there. Now, देखिए, now we'll go ahead and now talk about what is happening 1921 onwards. But before that, we'll talk about why is there a dissatisfaction with the Government of India Act 1919 and what are its provisions. Now, see, this is important. It has been asked in prelims before. Last to last year, there was a question on Government of India Act 1919. Last year, there was a question on 1935. Okay, so they're repeatedly asked time and again. Now 1919, the Government of India Act 1919, best way to remember it is also keep comparing it at times with 1909. देखिए, पहली बात, I told you, the objective of 1909 was to establish self-rule, true or false? The objective of 1909 Act was to establish self-rule, true or false? हमने लिखा भी है वहां पे, बड़ा बड़ा मैंने आपको लिखवाया होगा. ऑब्जेक्टिव इज नॉट टू स्टैब्लिश सेल्फ रूल एज द ब्रिटिश हैड आर्ग्यूड. खोल लीजिए, थोड़ा पीछे पलटिए, रिवीजन करने का भी अच्छा तरीका है. देखिए देखिए, लिखा है आपने. (1909) मॉर्ले मिंटो रिफॉर्म्स मिला, लिखा है, नॉट ब्लॉक लेटर्स में, है ना. अंडरलाइन भी क्या है, ऐसे दिमाग में भी अंडरलाइन करिए, है ना, सिर्फ कॉपी में नहीं. सो दैट इज देयर. वहां पे भी मैंने बताया था, मैं फिर बता रहा हूं, दैट द ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ 1919 एक्ट, एंड यू कैन राइट विथ मी, द ऑब्जेक्टिव ऑफ 1919 एक्ट वाज टू establish self government in India, self-government in India at an early date. देखिए, अब आप अगली क्लास में आए मेरी, तो रिवाइज करके आइएगा पीछे का. नया कुछ नहीं पढ़ना है, जितना मैं क्लास में कर दूं आप उतना तो करिए पहले रिवाइज. ओके, बिकॉज रिविजन इज द की. ओके, एट एन अर्ली डेट, बट विच डेट, दैट इज नॉट मेंशन्ड. ओके, तो विकास तो आएगा, वो भी पता है, 2024 तक आ जाएगा. हाउसिंग देखिए, 2024 इंडिया विल बिकम राम राज्य. हाउस फॉर ऑल, हेल्थ फॉर ऑल, एवरीथिंग फॉर ऑल विल बी बाय 2024. इंडिया ऑफ माय ड्रीम्स विल बी अचीव्ड. सो दैट इज दैट. सो द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1919's first objective is to establish self-government. Second objective of the Government of India Act 1919 is that, okay, now going forward with this objective, it's just important you take a minute here to understand the significance of this statement. The significance of this statement is that the British are saying that we want to establish self-governing institutions in India. Self-governing institutions meaning giving more and more autonomy to whom? Indians. Now, if they are willing to establish self-governing institutions in India, if Indians are now demanding Swaraj on the lines of white British colonies, is it a legal demand or a illegal demand? Legal demand. जब वो खुद ही कह रहे हैं that we want to establish self-governing institutions in India, तो आप मांग लिए, तो क्या गधा हो गया? You are legally allowed to ask something that the government itself is saying it wants to do, right? So establishing self-governing institutions in India, this was to be the objective of this act. From now on, if the Congress was to demand self-government, it was not something illegal or paralegal or whatever, it is squarely legal, or it is clearly legal. सेकेंड, देखिए अभी वही 1909 में मैंने आपको बताया दैट इन 1909 व्हाट इज हैपनिंग in 1909 in a separate electorate is happening, that is true. And okay, if you talked about separate electorates, so here separate electorates were extended apart from Muslims to other minorities as well, like Sikhs, like Anglo-Indians, and also to not just religious minorities but also linguistic ones. By linguistic minorities, for example, the Dravidians. So that is there. Okay, now we'll talk about Dravidians etc. more बाद में, लेकिन अभी बस आप इतना याद रखिए इनको भी मिल रहा है. उसके बाद one of the other things is that ये और एक simple fact है, women for the first time were granted the right to vote. Abhi women are being granted the right to vote for the very first time. Iske pehle you do not see women are granted right to vote. Actually it is Sarojini Naidu who is leading a women delegation of Indian representatives demanding that 1919 Act must grant a right to vote to women, because in 1918 end in Britain also women were granted the right to vote for the very first time. When World War I ended in Britain, women were granted right to vote. In 1919, when Indian reforms are pending, the Congress women representatives like Sarojini Naidu went with the delegation demanding voting rights for women also. Again, women are all, not all women are granted voting rights, but again on the basis of education, status, etc. Only a restricted number of women are to be granted voting rights, but a start is made. That is something that you need to remember. Because ये आपको prelims में सीधा सीधा statements देंगे and tell you to pick up which of the following are true or which of the following are not true. Okay, so you need to know. Then the other point, these are the three statements. The fourth point, which is also introduced, and from here will start the dissatisfaction. I mean, the Congress is still not supportive of the idea of separate electorates, but nonetheless, a bigger point of dissatisfaction for the Congress that emerges. And yes, 1916, the Congress said that okay, we are supportive of Congress Muslim League position on separate electorate, so that is why they're not saying anything much at this point of time on this issue. But what they're very strikingly against is what is proposed next, is that basically, if you remember, I told you 1909, what is introduced? The majority of Indians is introduced. Okay, so majority of Indians is introduced, which includes elected and non-elected representatives for the first time in 1909. We discussed. What is, I told you there also that in 1919 for the first time majority of elected Indians was to be introduced where? In the provincial at the provincial level. For every legislative council, they said we will introduce a majority of elected Indians, meaning if there were 100 members, 60 would be elected ones. There could be 20 who are non-elected Indians, and there could be 20 who are British officials. So this is something they're saying, majority of elected Indians is introduced for the first time. अभी इसको याद रखने का बिल्कुल सिंपल तरीका है केजरीवाल. कैसे? we'll come to it in a minute, because there's a certain problem. अभी ये Indian elected individuals are given majority. अभी ये क्या करेंगे? अंदर बैठ के ताली बजाएंगे? What will they do in the legislative council? They are supposed to do something. ये elect होके कुछ आए तो कुछ करेंगे, right? So they are the ones. They are saying कि okay, you elected individuals, you want self government. We want to give you self government. So we will allow you to form what? Ministries. We will allow you to form your ministries at the level of provinces, not at center, but at the level of provinces. कैसे? They said we will introduce diarchy at the level of provinces. देखिए, पहली बात, what is diarchy? देखिए, what is monarchy? Rule of one. Rule of one is monarchy. Rule of two is diarchy. Rule of three is oligarchy. है ना? Triarchy, quarterarchy, pentarchy, ऐसे कुछ भी नहीं. More than two is oligarchy. Okay. The rule of more than two is oligarchy. But what is to be understood? Do not confuse, and I am saying this with utmost importance. और यही मैं तब से ही चिल्ला रहा हूँ, ये आया भी था, यही आया था question. They just asked that Government of India Act 1919 introduced diarchy. What does diarchy mean? Okay. तो आपको ये पता होना चाहिए. Firstly, do not confuse diarchy with what? Federalism. Do not confuse diarchy with federalism. कि there is one central government, there is one state government. So that is diarchy. अरे then तो we have one local government also. Then you should say India is a oligarchy. अरे we say India is a democracy, neither is a monarchy nor it is a diarchy. Okay. So it is not a monarchy or diarchy. Monarchy का point ये नहीं है कि different levels of government को you are saying that there are two rulers or three rulers, etc. What we say on the other hand is that is what having independent and powerful central and state governments is a feature of what? Federalism. That is federalism, और वो आपको डिटेल में पढ़ाया जाएगा अलग से. ओके. बट ये मैं इसीलिए बता रहा हूँ ताकि आप बाद में कंफ्यूज ना करें. डायरकी में क्या है? देयर आर टू रूलर्स एट द सेम लेवल. इसीलिए बोल रहा हूँ केजरीवाल, यू हैव द गवर्नर बैजल and you also have the chief minister. Both are ruling in Delhi or not? Right. So that is what is diarchy. There are two rulers at the same level. ऐसा नहीं है इंडिया में डायरकी नहीं थी. You had Sonia Gandhi and Manmohan Singh both ruling at the center. है ना? तो that is also diarchy. But that is undeclared diarchy. This is declared diarchy. Okay. Now basically diarchy at the level of provinces. Now when there is diarchy at the level of provinces, they are saying that there will be legally two rulers at every provincial level. One will be the agent of the British, and who would be he? He would be the governor in every province. The position of governor in India is a colonial construct. Governors was the eyes and ears and the executive agency of whom? The crown. Okay. So that is what was the governor of the center. Okay. In that context. And here basically the governor is the one who was to be in charge of certain issues, as he was to make laws and implement laws on certain issues which were termed as reserved subjects, which continued to remain reserved for the governor. But on some issues, powers were to be transferred to whom? Elected. On some issues, powers were to be transferred to elected individuals. Okay. These elected individuals, they were to rule on transferred subjects. अभी अब आपको यहाँ पे ये नहीं करना है कि सर ये सेंट्रल लिस्ट है और ये स्टेट लिस्ट है ना. एक ज्ञान नहीं लगाना है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. ठीक है. नो सेंट्रल स्टेट लिस्ट, कंकरेंट लिस्ट, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. Here reserved list included obviously things which are valuable or invaluable to the British. Valuable. What is valuable to British is taxation, budget, law and order, right? All these things are valuable to the British. They maintain a strict control over all these things. मैंने पहले ही बोला बजट का कंट्रोल नहीं देंगे. The British will not give up the control of the budget. This is a point I told you before also. If you don't remember, I'm telling you again. Budget is something that the British want to maintain a complete control on. Why? Because they want to decide how taxes are raised, what taxes are raised, and how the money is spent. That is why they are here. Okay? So that is there. But certain power to make laws on certain subjects is actually transferred to whom? To the elected representatives. And these transferred subjects included things like Kejriwal. अरे पूरा केजरीवाल है. Health, education, local government also was basically being transferred to the whom? To the elected individuals. Now, but Congress says we are not happy with this diarchy. Why? Because Congress says this is an irrational system of division of power. कांग्रेस ये नहीं कह रहा है कि वी हैव अ प्रॉब्लम विद डिवीजन ऑफ पावर. कांग्रेस इज सेइंग कि ठीक है कोई नहीं, आप इलेक्टेड मिनिस्ट्रीज को खुश दे रहे हो, हम खुश हैं, बट वी आर अनहैप्पी विद व्हाट? विद द कांग्रेस क्रिटिसाइज्ड द डायरकी एंड सेड दैट द क्रिटिसाइज्ड द इरैशनल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ पावर. भाई क्यों? What is irrational about this distribution? That if you want to make a policy to provide health to all, education, health, etc. to the masses, then you will have to make new schemes. Modi ji has bought Ayushman Bharat. That will require what? Funds. And funds are under the control of whom? The governor. If the governor will not release funds, you make any law, any policy, it is useless. Right? So, the police is also under their control. They also continue to control the taxation and the revenue matters. The division of power is such that only for name the elected individuals have powers. But in reality, they are dependent upon whom? The governor of the province. And to that extent, these elected individuals, are they powerful or powerless? Powerless. That is why they criticize this distribution of power as irrational, because the governor continued to maintain a strict control. Also, even on these matters, if at all any bill is passed also, a law is made by elected representatives also, the governor continued to enjoy veto powers. Even on transferred list also, he can enjoy veto powers, block any bill passed. Okay, अभी केजरीवाल ये कहता था, अरे हमें पुलिस दे दो, हमें डीडीए दे दो, हम विकास नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, हमें डीडीए दे दो, हमें पुलिस दे दो. Right? So that is there. So that is what they keep arguing about, full statehood, etc. Because of the, ये भी question था आपके एग्जाम में इस बार, that the Supreme Court's verdict, will it solve the tussle? Right? पहले भी प्रीलिम्स में आ चुका है आपके ये क्वेश्चन, पहले एक बार प्रीलिम्स में भी आ चुका है ये क्वेश्चन, that about the relationship about union territories, their legislature and executive. Okay, क्योंकि you have a chief minister also. ये इस पे क्वेश्चन प्रीलिम्स में भी आ चुका है आपके पहले 2014 या 15 में आया था कभी. सो दैट इज दैट. ये कुछ इश्यूज हैं व्हिच आर वर ऑलवेज अ मैटर ऑफ टसल. सो यू सी दैट देयर इज अ डिससैटिस्फैक्शन प्राइमरीली बिकॉज ऑफ दिस इरैशनल सिस्टम ऑफ डिवीजन ऑफ पावर्स. दिस इज द प्रॉब्लम विद दिस डायरकी. आपको ये पता होना चाहिए व्हाट इज द प्रॉब्लम ऑल्सो. सो दीज आर सम मेजर 5 आई थिंक वी हैव रिटन पॉइंट्स. 4 or 5 points. कितने लिखे? 5? Yeah. So these are the 5 major points that you need to remember. Remember that diarchy is introduced at the central level or provincial level? Provincial. Not at the central level. क्यों? ये मैं क्यों बता रहा हूँ? क्योंकि जब हम 1935 की बात करेंगे, so in 1935 हम बोलेंगे कि यही चीज they are trying to do at the central level. Any doubts? Yes. Huh. So basically, in Gandhi was they imposed section 144. They said that there will be no public gatherings, and Gandhi and others, they are not allowed to enter. But Gandhi and others basically chose to ignore the directive and enter nonetheless. Now the British had two responses, two options. Either they could imprison Gandhi or they could ignore him. If Gandhi was to be imprisoned, this would cause even more public sentiment to pour out on the streets. So what they were of the argument was, let's ignore him for a while. At maximum, what can happen? That either he'll protest, etc. We can imprison him then. Or what can also happen is that they fail to start a movement. In that case, we don't need to confront them anyways. So basically, they're choosing to ignore for now and saying that if we need to deal with him directly, then we can do this at a later stage. So that is that. It's a part of political strategy of both. Yeah. Kheda, they are saying that we will not cooperate with the British by paying the taxes that we are anyways not supposed to pay. Okay, so we will not pay. Because normally if I say that don't pay taxes to the British, what will it be? It will be a civil disobedience. It will be a disobedience. You are breaking a law by not paying a tax. Here he is saying that we are not breaking any law by not paying a tax. Why? Because we are not supposed to pay taxes in the very first place. And we will not talk to the British officials. We will not cooperate with them in any manner. That is it. Clear? Anything else? सब वही है यार 1917, 1918, 1919 वही कर रहे हैं तीनों चंपारण then there is Kheda then there is Ahmedabad. Anything else? Clear? Thank you. Tomorrow we will have a class tomorrow also and tomorrow we will take this forward till 28 आराम से 1928-29 तक तो हम धीमे धीमे आज़ादी के पास बढ़ रहे हैं. Thank you.